Hello students, this is video 2 of unit 3 and in this video I'll be speaking about gathering and eliciting requirements. A reminder of your learning objectives: in this video or this section of the unit you need to be able to gather and elicit requirements using all of the techniques that we'll be explaining in this video. Please note that these videos cannot cover all of the slides, so please study the slides on eCanva. Why do we perform requirements gathering? As a BA, you want to understand clearly the problem that the new software system must solve so that we know which questions to ask our stakeholders or end users so that we can understand the context of the organization better in order to ascertain exactly what the system must do, must not do to satisfy the user's needs and what features will be useful in the new system, and also to understand clearly what parameters we will be working within as a BA. Where do requirements come from? From stakeholders, of course, from users, from documents like requests for proposals, requests for information such as in tender processes, from meetings, meeting minutes, reports, policy documents, etc. When you are eliciting and gathering requirements, you will likely find yourself in one of three situations. With greenfield engineering, there is nothing. It's a blank canvas, so you will start from scratch. No prior system exists, so you can be quite creative here. But be careful, because this is also the most daunting opportunity. Alternatively, you may find yourself in a situation where you need to re-engineer the business processes, redesign the system, or re-implement improvements to an existing system, perhaps using newer technology. And lastly, you may find that the current system works well, but its services needs to be provided in a new environment, such as an existing e-commerce site needing a mobile application. Requirements are best determined by business analysts and business people or stakeholders working together. There are a number of techniques for eliciting requirements, as you can see listed over here. We say eliciting because it really is a skill to be able to ask the right questions and probe where necessary in order to get the right information from the right people. Stakeholders do not know what we need to know as BAs, and they will most likely not answer you directly if you ask them what the requirements are, because they really actually don't know. So we use skillful elicitation techniques to find out what we need to know. Some of these techniques will include the following. We have the opportunity of having face-to-face interviews with some of the stakeholders. It could also be group interviews. The idea over here, in these tips provided over here, is that you would need to have a pre-interview planning and actual interview preparation, and then after the interview, some follow-up post-interview steps. You could also decide to administer questionnaires. When you are working with questionnaires, select participants who will provide you with useful information about the project. Design questionnaires carefully. Administer questionnaires to a wide sample so that you get enough of a representative response, and then follow up and send results to participants. Be careful how you set up your questions. People have a central tendency to just tick the middle option on a Likert scale, for example, such as neutral or not sure. And there is a thing called the halo effect. So be careful not to lead respondents into answering one question thinking it links to a previous question. Good questionnaire design is about having non-threatening, interesting questions. Group questions logically in coherent sections. Do not put important items last or far down in the questionnaire. Do not crowd a page with too many items. Avoid abbreviations, avoid bias and suggestive items. Number your questions to avoid confusion. And do not have ambiguity. Be very clear and concise about how you answer questions. You may want to look at open-ended questions, close-ended questions, and probing questions. So use a variety of these. And then you may also want to use observation, but remember that when people know that they are being watched, then their behavior changes. There's also document analysis. And you could also decide to use a JAD session, like we've explained in Unit 2, to collect requirements, which is a very useful method of collecting information from all the relevant stakeholders in a shortened space of time. JAD participants would include your stakeholders, project team members, a session facilitator who is trained in mediating and managing group dynamics, knowledgeable business experts, technical staff, policy makers or decision makers, and of course the end users of the system. The session will need a special room, as you can see over here, with no interruptions, maybe in a serene location off-site somewhere, and the facility should contain resources such as an overhead projector, whiteboard, flip charts, work material, electronic support like laptops, tablets, etc., printers, case tools, which is computer-aided software engineering, because as you are working through eliciting the requirements, the technical support and experts will be developing a prototype of what is being suggested in terms of requirements. And also group support systems is very important. The JAD session may continue for several days over a period of a few weeks. It is important to prepare questions. Just like within interviews, planning is very important. There must be a formal agenda and ground rules. The facilitator must keep track of the session, or keep the session on track, and help with technical terms and jargon, record group input accurately, and help to resolve issues. And there will be a need for a post-session follow-up. There is also the option of using prototypes to gain a better sense of stakeholders' needs and elicit true requirements, as I've mentioned with the JAD session. Here we can also use techniques such as rapid application development and extreme programming. Then there's also a user story, which is a narrative told from the user's perspective, describing his or her usage of the system. It helps to define the value a user gains from the system. It also helps us to manage requirements in an agile environment. User stories are high-level requirement artifacts that emulate conversations with the stakeholders. I'm not going to talk more about this here because I will elaborate on this in the next video. And then lastly in this slide, you can see here's a little tabulation of showing a few of the techniques mentioned, and on the left hand side in the vertical column over here, you can see that there are some criteria by which we can judge these techniques or evaluate these techniques. So when we are looking at each of these techniques and when we would want to use them, we can look at these criteria and see which one suits our purpose and our need best for that particular organization, and this might change for various organizations. In the next video, I will explain how to document system requirements using UML use case diagrams and formal use case descriptions.